The massive station floated above Terminus Prime like a silver crown in the darkness of space. Inside its largest chamber, representatives from 47 different species gathered for what most believed would be another ordinary meeting. The Galactic Council had maintained peace for 300 years, and today seemed like any other day. Day one Kim walked through the massive doors with 12 human guards behind him. This was unusual. Most ambassadors came alone or with one assistant. The other species noticed immediately. The insect-like Velkari clicked their mandibles nervously. The floating Photari, beings made of living crystal, pulsed with curious orange light. Day one wore a simple black suit, not the ceremonial robes most ambassadors preferred. His face showed no emotion as he moved to the human delegation's position. Other ambassadors whispered among themselves. Humanity had been part of the galactic community for 200 years, always polite, always agreeable. They were the species that said yes to everything, that avoided conflict at all costs. Council Matriarch Velsara, a towering reptilian creature with deep green scales, called the session to order. Her voice boomed across the chamber without need for amplification. We begin today's proceedings. First matter, trade agreements between the Drenari systems and Honorable Matriarch. Day one interrupted, standing. The chamber fell silent. Interrupting the matriarch was considered deeply disrespectful. I must speak immediately on a matter of urgent importance. Velsara's eyes narrowed. Ambassador Kim, you are not scheduled to speak for another 3 hours. What I have to say cannot wait 3 hours, Day one replied calmly. It cannot wait 3 minutes. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Velsara hesitated, then gestured. Very well, speak. Day one walked to the center of the chamber where all could see him. He looked around slowly, meeting the eyes of every ambassador present. When he spoke, his voice was steady and clear. Honorable council members, I stand before you today not to negotiate, but to inform you. The time for war has come. The chamber exploded into chaos. The Velkari began hissing and clicking loudly. The Photari flashed bright red, their color of alarm. Several ambassadors stood, shouting questions and protests. The amphibious Drenari representative began speaking in 3 voices at once, a sign of extreme distress in their culture. Velsara slammed her massive tail against the floor, creating a sound like thunder. Order! Ambassador Kim, explain yourself immediately. Are you threatening this council? I am not threatening anyone, Day one said quietly. The chamber slowly fell silent again, everyone wanting to hear what would come next. I am warning you. I am telling you a truth that this council has hidden for decades. He pulled out a small device and activated it. A holographic display filled the center of the chamber. It showed a planet, green and beautiful, covered in oceans and forests. This is Colony World Velkari 7. Population 300,000. Established 120 years ago. The image changed, showing the same planet, but now it was gray and lifeless. This is Velkari 7 today. Population 0. The Velkari ambassador, an older female named Kreisha, rose from her seat. That colony was destroyed by natural disaster. A volcanic event. That is what the official report says, Day one agreed. He changed the image again. Another planet appeared, this one covered in vast purple grasslands. Photari settlement Bright Hope. Population 500,000. Official report says equipment malfunction caused catastrophic failure. The image changed to show ruins. Reality, the entire population disappeared without trace. He showed planet after planet. Drenari ocean worlds left empty. Wanderer fleet communities found drifting and dead. Mining colonies of the rocky Tarmai people discovered abandoned with meals still on tables. 60 worlds in total, spanning 50 years. You lie, shouted an ambassador from the back. "These are unrelated incidents." Day 1 remained calm. "That is what I believed too, until human ships found survivors." He changed the image to show a small group of Valkyrie children, barely old enough to stand. These younglings were found in stasis pods on Valkyrie 7. They were hidden by a human researcher before the attack came. Kreisha gasped. "That is impossible." "We were told there were no survivors." "You were told wrong," Day 1 said. "Or more accurately, you were lied to." He looked directly at Velsara. "This council knew. This council has known about these attacks for decades. And this council voted to classify the information rather than investigate it." "These are serious accusations," Velsara said. But her voice had lost some of its confidence. D1 activated another display. This one showed official council documents, pages and pages of them, all marked with the highest classification seals. These are the reports filed by investigation teams over the past 50 years. All of them documented evidence of coordinated attacks. All of them recommended immediate action. All of them were buried by council vote. He pulled up a voting record. The chamber could see which council members had voted to classify the information. More than 2/3 of the current council had voted yes on at least one classification. Several had voted yes on all of them. The chamber erupted again, but this time the anger was directed at each other. Species that had lost colonies demanded answers from those who had voted to hide the truth. Accusations flew back and forth. Velsara tried to restore order, but her authority had been shattered. "Even if what you say is true," she finally managed to shout over the noise, "what would you have us do? We have no evidence of who is responsible for these attacks." "That," Day 1 said, "is because you stopped looking. Humanity will not stop looking. We have tracked the attackers. We know their methods. We know their next target. And we know that they will not stop unless someone stops them. You cannot declare war without council approval." Another ambassador shouted. "I am not asking for approval," Day 1 replied. "I am informing you of our decision. Humanity and any species brave enough to stand with us will defend the innocent. We will find those responsible for these attacks. We will stop them." He paused, looking around the chamber one more time. "We hoped you would join us. We prayed you would show courage. But we see now that this council values comfortable lies more than hard truths." He began walking toward the exit, his guards falling in around him. As he reached the door, he turned back. "Humanity will act, with or without you. The time for peace built on the bones of the forgotten is over. The time for war has come." The doors closed behind him, leaving the council chamber in absolute chaos. 3 months before Day 1's declaration, Captain Hannah Song sat in her command chair aboard the exploration vessel, Wandering Star. Her crew was finishing a routine survey of an uninhabited system when the distress signal came through. It was weak and broken, but the signature was clear. "Valkyrie Civilian Emergency Beacon." "That doesn't make sense," said her first officer. "There are no Valkyrie colonies in this sector." "There's one," Hana replied, checking the star charts. "Valkyrie 7. Small colony, mostly farmers and researchers. But it's 3 light years from here. How are we picking up their beacon?" The communications officer looked up, confused. "Captain, the signal is coming from this system. From the 4th planet." Hannah frowned. "Change course. Let's investigate." As they approached the 4th planet, what they saw made no sense. The world below matched the description of Valkyrie 7 perfectly. Same size, same atmospheric composition, same orbital period. But according to their navigation data, Valkyrie 7 should be 3 light years away. Someone moved an entire planet? The first officer asked in disbelief. "No," Hana said quietly. looking at the gray, lifeless surface. Someone moved us. Or our charts are wrong. Either way, something very bad happened here. They landed near the source of the beacon. The colony was intact but empty. Buildings stood undamaged. Personal belongings lay scattered in homes. Food sat on tables, long since rotted. But there were no bodies. No signs of struggle. The entire population had simply vanished. "Captain, you need to see this," called her security chief from what appeared to be a research station. Inside, they found a hidden room behind a false wall. And in that room, they found 12 stasis pods. Inside 11 of them were Valkyrie children, barely alive but stable. The 12th pod held a human. Dr. Taemin Park gasped for air as they revived him. His first words were, "Did you save them? Did you save the children?" "We saved you all," Hana assured him. What happened here? Over the next few hours, Taemin told them everything. He had been working as a xenobiologist on Valkyrie 7, studying local plant life. 6 months ago, ships appeared in orbit without warning. They didn't communicate. They didn't demand surrender. They simply began taking people. Beams of light came from the ships, Taemin explained, his hands shaking as he remembered. Anyone caught in them just floated up. They screamed at first, then went silent. I was in the research station when it started. I grabbed every child I could find and hid them in the emergency shelter. I put us all in stasis, hoping someone would find us. "Why didn't you send a distress signal immediately?" Hannah asked. "I did," Taemin said bitterly. "The colony sent dozens of them. I could see the transmission logs before we went into stasis. Every signal was acknowledged by council relay stations. Help was supposed to be coming." He looked at her with hollow eyes. No one came. Hannah reported everything to Earth Command immediately. Admiral Jae-won Choi responded personally within hours. "Captain Sung, you are to return to Earth immediately. Tell no one else about this. If what you found is true, we need to understand why the Council ignored those distress calls." While Hannah made her way back to Earth, Admiral Choi assigned one of his best intelligence officers to investigate. Yoonji Beek was a specialist in information systems. If there was data to find, she would find it. It took Yoonji 3 weeks to crack the Council's secured databases. What she discovered made her sick. Not only had the Council received the distress calls from Valkyrie 7, they had received distress calls from 63 other colonies over the past 50 years. Every single one had been classified. Every single investigation had been shut down. But the worst discovery was in the financial records. Several council members had received large payments from anonymous sources, always shortly after a colony disappeared. The payments were carefully hidden, routed through hundreds of dummy accounts, but Yoonji traced them all. Someone was paying council members to ignore the attacks, paying them to bury the investigations, paying them to let entire populations disappear. Admiral Choi brought the evidence to Earth's Prime Minister, Sang-wook Lee. They met in a secure bunker, with only a handful of trusted advisors present. "This is bigger than we thought," Sang-wook said, reading through Yoonji's reports. "If we expose this, it could tear the council apart." "If we don't expose it," Choi replied, "more colonies will die. The council could expel us from galactic society," one advisor warned. "We would lose access to trade routes, technology exchanges, defensive pacts." Sang-wook was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he stood. Humanity did not fight its way from caves to the stars by staying silent when evil happened. "We will expose this, but we will do it right. We will gather evidence that cannot be denied. We will find allies among the other species, and we will prepare for the possibility that we might have to stand alone." He turned to Admiral Choi. "Prepare our fleets, not for invasion, but for defense. If we are expelled from the council, we need to be ready to protect ourselves. To Yoonji, he said, keep digging. Find everything. Find who is paying the bribes. Find where these attackers come from. Find their next target. And to his diplomatic corps, he gave the hardest order. Find me our voice. Find me someone who can stand before the council and make them listen. Make them see what they have become. That someone was Ambassador Da-Won Kim. Over the next 2 months, Da-Won prepared. He studied every piece of evidence Yoonji had gathered. He spoke with Taemin and the rescued children for hours, learning every detail of the attack. He reached out quietly to ambassadors from species that had lost colonies, planting seeds of doubt about the official explanations. Meanwhile, Yoonji made a breakthrough. By analyzing the energy signatures Hana's ship had detected at Valkyrie 7, she identified a pattern. The attackers always struck colonies in remote sectors. They always chose worlds with populations between 100,000 and 500,000. And they always hit during the local planet's night cycle. Using this pattern, she predicted the next target with 87% confidence. A Fatari colony world called Greenhollow, home to 3 million civilians. The attack would come in approximately 3 months. Sangwook faced another choice. If they warned the council, the warning might be buried like all the others. But if they defended Greenhollow without council approval, it would be an act of war according to galactic law. We warn them, Sangwook decided. But we do it publicly. We do it in a way they cannot ignore. Day 1. It is time. As Day 1 prepared to leave for Terminus Prime, Admiral Choi gave him one final piece of advice. They will call you a warmonger. They will say humanity is trying to seize power. Stand firm. The truth is on our side. Day 1 smiled sadly. The truth has never been enough before. Why should it be enough now? Because this time, Choi replied, we are not asking permission to speak it. The galaxy burned with debate in the days after Day 1's declaration. News networks across hundreds of worlds showed the footage of his speech over and over. Some called him a hero. Others called him a dangerous fool who would drag everyone into unnecessary war. The council split into factions. Some members demanded humanity be expelled immediately for such disrespect. Others, especially those from species that had lost colonies, began asking uncomfortable questions. Why had those distress calls been ignored? Where were the investigation reports? Who had voted to classify them? On the frontier world of New Bizan, Commander Hyeon Woonam oversaw the construction of what he hoped would become coalition headquarters. New Bizan was a human colony, small and unremarkable, but it sat at the junction of several trade routes. More importantly, it was far enough from council space that they could work without interference. The first ship to arrive was not one Hyeon Woo expected. A Valkyrie warship dropped out of hyperspace and requested permission to land. Hyeon Woo's staff was nervous. They had only a handful of defense platforms. If the Valkyrie were here to attack, they could not stop them. Ambassador Kreisha herself stepped off the ship, accompanied by a dozen Valkyrie soldiers. Commander Nam, she said through her translator device, I come to offer the support of my people. Your Captain Song saved our children. Now we will help you save others. Hyeon Woo bowed respectfully. Your support is welcome, Ambassador. But I must ask, does your government know you are here? My government is divided, Kreisha admitted. But my military is not. We have lost too many colonies to these attacks. If the council will not act, then we will act with you. Within a week, more ships arrived. The aquatic Dronari sent 3 of their massive waterships, vessels that could transport thousands of their people in mobile ocean habitats. Their spokesperson, an elder named Kelvin, explained simply, we lost 7 ocean worlds in the past 20 years. The council told us they were destroyed by tidal forces. We know better now. The Wanderers came next, nomadic species who lived on generation ships, never settling on planets. They had lost entire communities, hundreds of thousands of people. Their fleet leader, an old woman named Nari, offered every ship they could spare. "We have no worlds to defend," she said, "but we will defend yours." Not everyone who came was military. Scientists arrived offering their knowledge. Engineers brought new technologies. Medics set up field hospitals. New Bizin transformed from a quiet farming colony into a military staging ground in less than 2 weeks. But the coalition remained small. Most species were too afraid to openly defy the council. They sent messages of private support, but would not commit ships or soldiers. Haiyan Wu understood their fear, but it frustrated him. They were running out of time. Meanwhile, on Terminus Prime, the council debated endlessly about what to do about humanity's accusations. Matriarch Velsara knew her position was weakening. Too many species were demanding answers. But authorizing a real investigation would mean admitting the council had been wrong for decades. She chose a middle path. The council would authorize an official investigation, but with strict limitations. They could only investigate cases from the past 10 years. They could not access classified council files without approval from 2/3 of the council. And the investigation would be led by someone the council trusted. "We appoint Ambassador Sujin Han to lead this investigation," Velsara announced. "She has served the council faithfully for 15 years. She will find the truth, whatever it may be." Sujin Han was known across the galaxy as one of humanity's most diplomatic voices. She had spent her entire career building bridges between species, finding peaceful solutions to conflicts. Many in the council relaxed when they heard she would lead the investigation. Sujin could be trusted not to cause trouble. They were wrong. Sujin's first act as chief investigator was to resign from her council position. She sent a message that played on every news network in the galaxy. In it, she stood in her council chambers, wearing her ceremonial robes, and spoke calmly. "I have served the council for 15 years. I believed in its mission. I believed in its ideals. But I can no longer serve an institution that values comfortable lies over hard truths." She paused, and those who knew her saw tears in her eyes. 12 years ago, my sister Yeon disappeared from a research station. The council told me it was equipment malfunction. They told me her body was lost in space. I believed them because I wanted to believe them. She held up a datapad. But the evidence Ambassador Kim presented shows that station was attacked. Shows that distress calls were sent. Shows that help never came because someone voted to classify those calls rather than answer them. Her voice grew stronger. "I will not serve those who let my sister die to maintain their illusion of peace. I hereby resign from the council and join the coalition. I will lead this investigation, but I will do it for the victims, not for the council's reputation." The message sent shockwaves across the galaxy. If even Sujin Han, the most loyal council supporter among humans, had turned against them, how bad must the corruption be? More species began arriving at New Bizin. Not many, but enough. A dozen worlds sent ships. Hundreds of volunteers arrived daily. The coalition grew from a desperate idea into something real. EUN-G arrived on New Bizin with new intelligence. She had been tracking energy signatures across the galaxy, looking for patterns. "I found the next target," she told Haiyan Wu and Sujin in a secure briefing room. "Greenhollow. Population 3 million Futari. The attack will come in 8 days. 8 days, Haiyan Wu repeated. "Can we be ready?" "We have to be," Sujin said. "If we fail to protect Greenhollow, the coalition will fall apart. Species will decide the council was right, that we are just warmongers chasing shadows. And if we succeed?" Haiyan Wu asked. If we succeed, Sujin replied, we prove that someone cares enough to fight for the innocent. We prove that courage still exists in this galaxy. Over the next 8 days, the coalition worked without rest. Every available ship was prepared for combat. Battle plans were drawn and redrawn 100 times. Nobody knew what the enemy would look like or how they would attack. All they had were Taemin's descriptions and the energy signatures. Yoonji had detected Hyun-woo sent a message to Greenhollow's government, warning them of the impending attack. The Futari governor was skeptical at first, but Sujin's reputation convinced him to at least prepare evacuation plans. On the 8th day, the coalition fleet departed for Greenhollow. 47 ships in total, representing 8 different species. It was a tiny force by galactic standards. The Council's peacekeeping fleet had thousands of ships. But it was what they had done as they entered hyperspace. Hyun-woo addressed the fleet. We go to face an enemy we have never seen. We go to protect a world that is not our own. We go because it is right. Because someone must stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. Today, we show the galaxy what courage looks like. The Futari on Greenhollow watched the skies as the coalition fleet arrived and took up defensive positions around their world. Most did not believe the attack would come. It seemed impossible that anyone would target their peaceful farming communities. Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Indomitable, watching the sensors, waiting, hoping Yoonji was wrong, hoping they had come all this way for nothing. At exactly midnight on Greenhollow's largest continent, the sensors detected something impossible. Space itself was folding, tearing, opening. And through those tears in reality came ships unlike anything in the galactic databases. The enemy ships emerged from folded space like nightmares made real. They were massive, organic-looking vessels that seemed to pulse with their own internal light. Their hulls appeared to be made of living tissue, covered in what looked like scales or armor plating that shifted and moved. Blue and green bioluminescence ran across their surfaces in patterns that hurt to look at. What are those things? Someone whispered on the bridge of the Indomitable. Target lock achieved, the weapons officer reported. Firing. Energy beams lanced out from the coalition ships, striking the enemy vessels directly. The beams passed straight through them as if they were not there. Missiles followed, detonating in empty space, even though sensors showed solid targets. They're phasing, Yoonji said, her fingers flying across her console. They exist partially in our dimension and partially somewhere else. That's how they move through space so quickly. That's how they take people without leaving traces. Wing Commander Ji-won Kang led the fighter squadrons in the first attack run. Her pilots were the best humanity had, veteran flyers who had trained for every possible combat scenario. But nothing had prepared them for this. I'm seeing the target, but my weapons won't lock, one pilot reported in frustration. Manual firing, Ji-won ordered. Aim for the glowing sections. Maybe those parts are solid. The fighters dove at the enemy ships, guns blazing. A few shots seemed to connect, creating small explosions on the enemy hulls. But most fire passed harmlessly through. The enemy ships began their attack. Beams of pale light shot down toward Greenhollow's surface. The coalition ships tried to intercept them, but the beams passed through their hulls without effect. On the surface, Futari civilians touched by the beams began floating upward. Pulled by an invisible force. Dr. Min Seo-yoon worked frantically in the largest city's medical center, coordinating with local authorities. Get everyone into the underground shelters. The beams can't penetrate solid rock. How do you know? A Futari doctor asked. I don't, Min Seo admitted. But it's better than standing in the open. Aboard the Indomitable, engineer Biorasim studied the sensor data from every weapon hit, every near miss, every interaction with the enemy. There had to be a pattern. There had to be something they could use. "Commander," she suddenly called out, "I think I found something." When our weapons pass through them, there's a brief resonance spike, a specific frequency. They're not always phased. They flicker in and out of our dimension incredibly fast, maybe hundreds of times per second. Haiyan-Wu leaned over her console. "Can we time our weapons to fire when they're solid?" "Maybe," Boar said, "but the timing would have to be perfect. We're talking about windows measured in microseconds." "Our AI targeting systems can handle microseconds," Haiyan-Wu said. "Can you program the frequency into them?" Baora's fingers flew across her keyboard. "Uploading the algorithm now. All ships should have it in 30 seconds. The algorithm spread across the coalition fleet. Weapon systems recalibrated, learning to predict when the enemy ships would solidify. The next volley of fire was different. Energy beams struck home, burning through the organic armor. Missiles detonated against solid hulls, creating massive explosions. The enemy ships reacted immediately. They began phasing faster, making the timing windows even smaller. But the coalition's AI systems adapted too, learning the new patterns. "We're hurting them," G1 reported, her fighter pulling up from another attack run. "But they're adapting as fast as we are." Then the enemy changed tactics. Massive pods launched from the larger ships, hundreds of them, small enough to avoid the coalition's weapons. The pods phased directly inside coalition vessels, appearing in corridors and cargo bays. The pods opened, releasing creatures that looked like they had been assembled from nightmares. They stood on 4 legs, with multiple arms ending in blade-like claws. Their heads were featureless except for a single large opening that pulsed with the same pale light as the harvesting beams. Aboard the Indomitable, Marine Lieutenant Yunho Cha grabbed his rifle as alarms blared throughout the ship. "All Marines, we have boarders. Deck 7 through 12. They're harvesting the crew." Yunho led his squad through the corridors at a run. They found the first creature in a crew quarters section. It had 3 crew members floating in the air before it, unconscious, while that terrible light pulsed from its mouth. "Fire!" Yunho ordered. The bullet struck the creature and it shrieked, a sound that made everyone's teeth hurt. But it did not die. It turned toward them, releasing the floating crew members who collapsed to the floor. Then it charged. The fight was brutal and close. The creature's claws could cut through armor like paper. 2 Marines went down before they finally killed it with concentrated fire to what seemed to be its core. "These things are tough," one Marine panted. "How many are on the ship?" "Sensors show 43 boarders total," Yunho replied grimly. "And we're just one ship. The whole fleet is being boarded." The battle raged on multiple fronts. In space, coalition ships dueled with the enemy vessels, both sides adapting and counter-adapting their tactics. On Greenhollow's surface, millions of Fatari huddled in shelters while the harvesting beams swept overhead. Inside the coalition ships, Marines fought desperate battles against the boarding parties. Admiral J1 Choi watched from his command chair on the Indomitable as the casualties mounted. They were holding, but barely. The enemy had more ships, better technology, and tactics refined over millennia of harvesting. The coalition had courage and desperation. It was not enough. "Sir, we're losing ships," the tactical officer reported. The Durnari vessel Tidecaller just went dark. The Wanderer ship Long Journey is venting atmosphere. Choi looked at the tactical display. More enemy ships were arriving, phasing in from wherever they came from. At this rate, the coalition would be overwhelmed in less than an hour. He made a decision. "All ships, this is Admiral Choi. Fall back to defensive position Beta. Form a shell around Greenhollow. We're going to focus everything on protecting the planet, not winning the battle." As the coalition ships repositioned, Choi turned to his helmsman. "Plot a ramming course for the largest enemy ship. the one coordinating their movements. "Sir?" the helmsman asked, shocked. "You heard me. Everyone else, get to the escape pods. You have 5 minutes." Haiyan Wu realized what Choi was planning. "Admiral, no. No. We need you." "You need a victory more," Choi replied calmly. "That command ship is coordinating their phasing. I've been watching it. It stays solid longer than the others because it's sending signals. If we destroy it, we might disrupt their whole formation." "There has to be another way," Haiyan Wu protested. "There is no time for another way," Choi said. "Get to an escape pod, Commander." "That's an order. You're in command now." Haiyan Wu wanted to argue, but he knew Choi was right. He saluted and ran for the nearest pod. Across the ship, crew members scrambled for escape pods. The indomitable systems began shutting down, routing all power to engines and shields. On the bridge, Choi sat alone, watching the enemy command ship grow larger on his screen. The enemy saw what he was doing and tried to phase out, but they were too slow. The Indomitable struck the command ship at full speed while it was still partially solid. The collision was catastrophic. Both ships exploded in a fireball visible from Greenhollow's surface. For a moment, the entire battle stopped. Then the enemy ships began flickering erratically, their phasing going wild without the command ship to coordinate them. Coalition weapons found their targets more easily. Fighter runs became more effective. "Press the attack," Haiyan Wu ordered from his escape pod, watching on a small screen. "Don't let them recover." The remaining enemy ships, no longer working in perfect coordination, began taking serious damage. One by one, they started retreating, phasing away to wherever they came from. Within minutes, the battle was over. The enemy was gone. The footage spread across the galaxy like wildfire. News networks showed the battle again and again. Humans and their allies, vastly outnumbered, standing between innocent Fatari civilians and an enemy the Council had pretended did not exist. They showed Admiral Choi's sacrifice, the Indomitable ramming the enemy command ship to save millions of lives he had never met, on 1,000 worlds. In 100 different languages, people asked the same question. Why had the Council lied? The Council chamber on Terminus Prime was in chaos. Species that had stayed neutral now demanded answers. Ambassadors whose governments had supported the Council's position found themselves recalled and replaced. The carefully maintained illusion of universal peace had shattered like glass. Matriarch Velsara tried to maintain order, but her authority was gone. When she called for the next day's session, only half the ambassadors attended. The others sent messages saying they no longer recognized her. Leadership. The vote of no confidence came 3 days after the Battle of Greenhollow. It was not even close. Velsara was removed from her position by a margin of 41-6. As she left the chamber for the last time, she stopped at the entrance and looked back. "I tried to keep the peace," she said quietly. "You kept a lie," replied Ambassador Kreisha. "There is a difference." The Council reformed quickly. New leadership was appointed through emergency elections. And in an unprecedented move, the new Council created a position that had never existed before. They called it the Co-Chair of Defense and appointed Ambassador Day One, Kim, to fill it. Day One stood before the Reform Council and spoke the same words he had spoken months before. But this time, they listened. "The enemy we faced at Greenhollow is called the Harkol. We captured damaged sections of their ships. We interrogated their wounded. They are a parasitic species that exists partially in dimensional pockets, feeding on the life force of sentient beings. They have been harvesting our people for millennia." He activated a display showing the Harkol technology they had recovered. But Greenhollow was just one battle. The Harkol will return in greater numbers. We need to prepare. We need to build a unified defense force. We need to stop hiding from hard truths and face them together. The Council voted to authorize the creation of the Galactic Defense Force, not to replace individual species militaries, but to coordinate responses to threats like the Harkle. Commander Hyan Wu Nam was appointed as its first commander, but the most important mission was given to Commodore Hannah Song, recently promoted after her actions in discovering the truth about Volcari 7. Using technology reverse-engineered from captured Harkal vessels, she would lead an expeditionary force to track the enemy back to their home dimension. "It's dangerous," Day One told her before she departed. "We don't know what you'll find there." "We know enough," Hannah replied. "We know they've been taking our people. We know they keep them alive somehow. And we know that if we don't stop them now, they'll just keep harvesting until there's nothing left." Her fleet consisted of 20 ships from 7 different species, all volunteers. Engineer Biora Sim had designed a special device that would let them follow the dimensional tiers the Harkle used to travel. It was experimental and might not work, but they had to try. The dimensional pocket they found was worse than anyone had imagined. It was a vast space between dimensions, lit by strange light that came from nowhere. And floating in that space were thousands of structures, each one containing hundreds of thousands of beings in stasis. "How many?" Hannah whispered, looking at the sensor readings. "Preliminary scans show approximately 300 million beings," Boa replied, her voice shaking. "From hundreds of different species. Some of these stasis chambers are thousands of years old." They had found the Harkle's harvesting storage. Millions of sentient beings, drained of most of their life force but kept barely alive, stored like food in a pantry. Hannah sent the data back to the Council immediately. When the galaxy saw what the Harkle had been doing for millennia, the last traces of doubt disappeared. Species that had called humanity warmongers now volunteered their fleets. The Harkle were not just raiders. They were an existential threat to all sentient life. The Reformed Council declared the liberation of the harvested beings to be the galaxy's highest priority. Resources poured into the effort. Scientists from 100 worlds worked together to figure out how to safely revive beings who had been in stasis for years or even centuries on Earth. Preparations began for a ceremony to honor those who had died at Greenhollow. Representatives from every coalition species would attend. Prime Minister Sang-Wook Lee would give the main address. The ceremony was held in Seoul, in a memorial park built on the site where the Indomitable had been constructed. Statues of Admiral Choi and the others who had died at Greenhollow stood in a circle around a fountain. But they were not the only statues. Representatives from every species that had died defending Greenhollow were honored. Equally, Sang-Wook stood before the assembled crowd and spoke. When Ambassador Daewon Kim declared that the time for war had come, many thought he meant humanity sought conquest. They were wrong. The war he spoke of was not against other peoples, but against the darkness that those in power tried to hide. It was a war against the comfortable lie that says we can have peace by ignoring evil. It was a war for the right of the innocent to live without fear. He gestured to the statues around him. These people did not die as humans, or Volcari, or Photari, or Dranari. They died as guardians. They died doing what the Council would not do. They died protecting those who could not protect themselves. Today, we begin a new chapter. Not one where humans lead and others follow, but one where we all stand together. The Harkle have harvested millions of our people. We will free every single one. And we will make sure that never again can anyone hide such evil behind classified reports and comfortable lies. In the audience, Dr. Taemin Park sat with the Volcari children he had saved, now recovering well under proper care. Around them sat survivors from other attacks, rescued from the dimensional pocket by Hana's fleet. Nearby, Sujin Han sat with her sister Yeon, one of the first to be successfully revived from stasis. After the ceremony, Taemin walked through the memorial park with the younglings. They came to a playground where children of multiple species were playing together. Human children taught Valkyrie children how to use the swings. Futari younglings showed Dronari children how to make their bodies glow in pretty patterns. Got one of the Valkyrie children tugged on Taemin's sleeve. "Teacher, will the bad things come back?" Taemin knelt down so he was at eye level with the child. "Maybe, but if they do, there are brave people who will fight them. People who won't hide or run away. People who will stand between you and anything that tries to hurt you. Like you did? Like all of us should," Taemin said gently. "That's what it means to be part of a community. We protect each other." Across the galaxy, the new Galactic Defense Force was organizing. Haiyan Wu oversaw training exercises where ships from dozens of species learned to work together. The Ura and her team of engineers developed better weapons against phasing technology. Medical teams prepared facilities to receive and treat millions of revived beings. And in deep space, sensors detected new Harkle signatures gathering in the void. More ships than had attacked Greenhollow. Many more. Day One read the reports in his new office on Terminus Prime. The Harkle were coming in force this time. They would not make the same mistakes they had made at Greenhollow. The real war was about to begin. But as he looked at the messages flooding in from across the galaxy, offering support, offering ships, offering soldiers and resources and hope, Day One allowed himself a small smile. When he had stood in this chamber months ago and declared that the time for war had come, he had stood almost alone. Now, the galaxy stood with him. The Harkle would come, and they would find not a divided council that hid from hard truths, but a united galaxy, willing to fight for what was right. The time for comfortable lies was over. The time for courage had begun. And in the memorial park on Earth, as the sun set behind the statues of those who had sacrificed everything, children of a dozen species played together without fear. They did not know about the gathering Harkle fleet. They did not know about the millions still waiting to be freed from stasis. They did not know about the long war that was coming, but they played beneath the watchful eyes of guardians who had proven that someone would always stand between the innocent and the darkness. That was enough. That would always be enough.